Humans are social creatures. That's why the desire to be liked is very deep within us. Yet if you go about having those needs met in that order, trying to be liked first, you will find yourself adjusting to whatever is the flavor of the hour or the opinion of the person you're with or the go along to get along mindset will step in. Instead, if you flip the order and you focus first on earning respect and how you earn respect, through an ability to be of service to others, through an ability to demonstrate strong performance, to understand what expectations are for people that are filling your role, whether that's a role as a parent or the role you fill as a professional. We earn respect by being accountable. When we make a mistake, we own it. We don't place blame. We own it so we can get to the solution, right? All of these respect-earning behaviors combined with the courage to actually be yourself and to be authentic. Once you can do that, the like part literally just takes care of itself.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Courtney Lynch to share how to lead yourself and others. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote is from Abraham Maslow. If you deliberately plan on being less than you are capable of being, then I warn you that you'll be deeply unhappy for the rest of your life. You'll be evading your own capacities, your own possibilities. To me, that's the secret of leadership. Seeing the possibility in others that they don't see in themselves, and then helping them to achieve that. The same goes for us in our reflection in the mirror. We're going to chat about that today. But before we do, let's review last week's action step, which was to ask yourself, what is my intention behind everything I am doing? Being intentional is what helps you to create success. How do you create intentionality in your life? One way I do it is through being part of a mastermind. I just got back from my mastermind meetup, and you've met some of the people who I was just with. They've been on some of our previous episodes, which begs the question, do you have a board of directors that you've given permission to sharpen you? Are you looking to hear feedback about what you need to do to improve? Are you learning about your blind spots? I love having my board, and they hold me accountable, and they're constantly sharpening me. We all need someone to sharpen us. Who sharpens you? What does leadership mean to you? That's our conversation for today. To me, a great leader is someone who sees the best in you that you may not see in yourself and can bring it out. We have Courtney Lynch on today, and together with Angie Morgan, they are executive coaches that work with high-performing leaders to help achieve next-level results. After their service in the Marine Corps, they co-created the leadership development firm called LeadStar. and co-wrote the New York Times best-selling books Spark and Leading from the Front. Their next book, Bet on You, How Leaders Win with Risk, will be out in spring of 2022. Let's meet Courtney. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, Courtney Lynch. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Rocky. It's great to be here.
And I'm excited for our conversation. Before we get to that, we like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Wow. I don't know if I had much of a formal education on the school side or really the family side. I always believe there are two very under-taught topics in our society, financial literacy being one, and leadership, my passion, being the other. So I think I learned more from seeing things and taking things in. That was until I was about in high school, and I was a lifeguard when I was in high school. I would say about my junior year is when I really got a kind of informal but more official education on money. I had a gentleman who lived in the neighborhood where I was the local community lifeguard who was just a great guy, and he used to talk to me about investing, and he would bring me like a mutual fund prospectus and talk to me about dollar cost averaging and all these different aspects of financial health. And it was great. I think he realized how much I didn't know and just took it upon himself that summer to be an instructor for me, one of those folks that comes into your life for a season and a reason.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, that's not normal to happen. Most people have the story that you already talked about. Nobody taught us about money. It's rare that you find that mentor. And there's a guy who wrote a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Because he found the mentor.
Yeah, I love Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He was a Marine as well. I'm a Marine too. And so I love the book, right? So yeah, it was very much that scenario. And get this, the guy's name, I still remember it today, was Dave Schwab, right? So you think of Schwab and all the Charles Schwab and all of that, right? But his name was Dave Schwab. And I don't think there was any relation, but I've always found that ironic.
And so from that, did you then continue on later to continue to learn, or did he give you enough to pretty much get you most of the way there?
No, I mean, he gave me so much, but he really, I think maybe the most priceless gift was he ignited the curiosity in me and the realization, right? I mean, he used all the right headlines. Hey, you're young, you have time on your side. Being a millionaire is easier than you think, right? Like he definitely knew how to appeal because he saw me working so many hours at the pool, and he knew that, I'd do swim lessons on the side, and he saw that I was enterprising, right? And so he just said, yeah, it's what you do to earn your money, but it's how you actually make your money work for you, right? So he gave me that perspective. And I mean, I started investing not then at that point, but probably 19, $125 a month, which was a ton of money at the time. And hey, it's still not small change. But that investing like that gave me so much freedom at many crossroads of my life.
And that's what I think people don't realize is that the money gives you freedom at crossroads and at different points of your life. And were you putting it in retirement accounts or just straight brokerage account?
I was putting it in a straight brokerage account at that point. I almost want to say it probably predates the Roth IRA. But I was just it was Janus mutual funds. I mean, for those that know Janus, they were very accessible, right? They were very B2C focused, very much entice the individual investor. And then obviously Dave had taught me about dollar cost average and not even to think about market cycles. And so they had really easy plans that anyone could start. I think you had to have like $50 to start it. And so I felt excited that I had $125.
And that's cool because when you have after-tax money, when things happen or you want to make decisions or life throws you curveballs, you have the ability to deal with it. They say when you have money, you don't have problems, so to speak.
Yeah. It's like the closest we can come to buying peace, right? Obviously, we have to do a lot of internal work, I think, to find true peace. Yet having, the 3-month savings, the 6-month savings, or building out a base over time, it just helps you have a cushion and not a sense of urgency when some things that don't have to be urgent can be urgent for folks that are living more kind of on the edge without that cushion.
So very true. So what led you to join the Marines?
I'm a challenge junkie. I'm slightly crazy. No, it's, well, maybe that's true. But growing up, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. while my family, I didn't have any direct relatives that had served in the military. I did have a grandfather who served in the Coast Guard, so huge shout out to the Coast Guard. But a lot of my friends' fathers did, and I saw the military, just the presence in the Washington, D.C. area. And I was an athletic person. I loved challenge. I loved adventure. And then candidly, some of the financial resources as well. I joined after college, yet I had had a dream of wanting to go to law school. And so the GI Bill is a fantastic benefit. It's even better today than it was then, yet that made my legal education possible. So it was kind of my values, and it was a fit. And I candidly, too, I think deep down I knew I needed to grow up a bit, and the Marine Corps was going to give me an opportunity to do that, but also see what I was made of.
And military service definitely makes you grow up a little bit, right? And brings a level of discipline to your life, I would say.
A little bit of rigor, a little bit of discipline, and a heck of a lot of adventure, too.
So how did the military change you?
Wow, that's a great question. I think there's so many ways I could answer that. Yet I think the most significant is, my recruiter used to talk about this, right? Of course, there were the benefits for graduate school, and there was the travel opportunity and the paycheck. Yet he always used to talk about how, the biggest advantage you're going to see in your life that's going to last long after you put the uniform away is that you're going to become a leader through your time in the Marine Corps. And I got the context clues. I knew that that was a really positive thing, but I had no idea what that really meant. Yet that is how the Marine Corps shaped me. I learned to lead. I learned to influence and inspire. And I think we see all the Hollywood movies where military officers are barking orders and people are jumping to, and, it makes it look like, wow, that's how leadership happens. But that's actually not at all how we're taught to lead in the Marine Corps. It's about responsibility and how do you model the behaviors that allow you to influence and inspire. And that was not something I'd even thought about or understood as valuable, yet those were the lasting lessons of my time in uniform. And I think the aspects of the experience that shaped my character today the most.
And so I know you've said that people have a very common misconception about leadership. Is that what you were referring to?
I do. I think that our society ties leadership to power or prestige or status or a fancy corner office or a job title. And I don't think there's anything wrong with all of those things I just quickly listed. Yet I don't think they're really about leadership. I think that's the misconception. Those are certainly things that you can achieve if you want to. And if you're a leader and you want those things, your path is probably more accessible towards them. Yet I think leadership, when it comes down to it, is really about your ability to do two things very well. How well do you influence outcomes and inspire others? And those two things are done through how you show up and how you behave. Are you accountable, or do you place blame? Do you have a sense of service, or are you very self-focused? Do you demonstrate credible performance, or do you just try to get by? All those different choices we have in any given situation, how we choose to lead, I think, is really about how we're choosing to behave and how we're choosing to add value. And if that leads to power or prestige, great, if that's what you want. But I think that that's a common misconception, that we're anointed or appointed a leader. And instead, I think it's about a choice we make consistently, or as consistently as we can as fallible human people.
So I spent years in corporate America, and I'll tell you that when you think about leadership, that is not the definition that I saw. I think it's very much counter to that, unfortunately. And that is probably why most people see that as a misconception.
Yeah. I'm guessing you can relate to the bad boss experiences that we all have had and that I hear about in all too common of times. And
part of that is there is no real leadership training, I think, many times in corporate.
Yeah, like financial literacy, right? And leadership training under taught in our society. And we're working to shore that up, right? I think the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009 really put a spotlight on the need for financial education at all levels.
Very true. So what inspired you to write the book Spark, How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success?
Oh, I think you're getting at it, Rocky, right? There's not much formal leadership development or leadership training out there. And I think that I didn't want to keep secret what I had the privilege to learn, even though I wasn't expecting to learn how to lead. I mean, I guess I had been told I would be a leader as a Marine, but I didn't know what that meant. I thought it was because I was going to be an officer, so therefore I was in charge. Yet I learned a whole different element of leadership that, as you've been saying, isn't often what we see in the world.
And we'll dig into some of those. This book, though, and this whole project, this is a passion project, correct?
It is. Me and my colleagues, my co-authors, my colleagues at my company, LeadStar, we really believe better leaders equal better world. And we've seen it time and time again in the work that we've done over the past 17 years to help build leaders in nonprofit organizations, colleges, universities, government agencies, lots of publicly traded companies, family-held businesses. I mean, better leaders have an impact. And I think if we can get people thinking about leadership, talking about leadership, better leaders really does equal a better world.
And I agree with you. The one thing that I kind of struggle with, and I am one of these people. So you talk about sparks. And when I think of the word spark, I think of fire and heat, which in many companies, when you try to change the way things happen, when you challenge the way it's always done, you create heat. And so a lot of times it doesn't go well. Do you have advice? Like, how can we be a spark without having to take the heat?
Well, I don't know if we ever can prevent the heat, but I tend to think of sparks as catalysts, right? They are the catalysts. They are the folks that are already actively doing. They're actively innovating. They're working to meet and exceed standards. They are trying to be the change that they want to see. They're modeling strong examples. And not, again, 100% of the time, because there's no such thing as a perfect leader. We can just commit to being a better one, right? I just can't imagine a world without sparks. And so we wrote the book for those that are really trying to be a part of the change. And think about it, right? We all have leaders in our past, and they might not be well-known names, but people close to us that made a difference in our lives. And while those people might have created heat or caused friction or embraced conflict, they ultimately found ways through it. It wasn't paralyzing for them.
No, and it's helping bring about change in the organization and having the courage to do it. And otherwise, life doesn't turn out too well if you just accept the status quo and if you accept the way things are, especially in today's world. Businesses are changing so fast, and so many businesses are making others obsolete that you have to be able to constantly change and update yourself, and otherwise you kind of go away. And that's one thing I think Netflix has been very good at, is constantly evolving the company and going with that. And Blockbuster said, we're not going to change.
Trying to meet markets in different ways, right? Yeah, absolutely, right? And obviously, didn't they just recently, in the last 6 months, close the final last Blockbuster video store? So it is no longer a store. I think they still have merchandise, and Netflix is everywhere, right? And still pushing forward boldly on content and how they're building out their, they now realize they need talent. They need to win a talent war and get the best content. So how interesting, where they used to be trying to win distribution. So they've always taken one challenge and then they move on to the next that presents itself because they've taken that hill. So yeah, they're an inspiring company to watch for sure. And
I think they now are one of the largest production companies, producing their own content as well.
Absolutely, right? Them, Amazon, HBO Max is now there, right? They've created a whole new blue ocean that's now filling with competitors.
That it is, and we like to be out in the blue ocean. Much better than shark-infested waters.
Yeah, the choppy red waters for sure.
So you come from a military background. Military is full of jargon, and I think this one might have come out of the military. VUCA, is that correct? Or was that something later?
Absolutely. It did come out of the military, yet you hear it more and more in the private sector, especially in pandemic times, right? What VUCA is an acronym for is that volatility, uncertainty, conflict and ambiguity. And I think that those types of things, those attributes are in our world, whether we're in business and in the mix and trying to be that spark and affect change, or whether we're an individual trying to keep ourselves safe and healthy, right? We're in those VUCA environments.
And all of those words essentially cause anxiety in people.
They do, and very real anxiety, right? Yet volatility, uncertainty, ambiguity, I mean, those things are life, right? None of us can truly predict the future. We can only anticipate and prepare, right? Thinking about investing and finances. And so they are actually reality and descriptors of the friction and challenge we face every single day as humans.
So how do we work in a world that is like that? How do we adapt? What advice do you have for people?
I advise people to spend time understanding leadership, right? And of course, they can read Spark and understand leadership in that way, but there's so many different ways to commit to betterment as a leader. The key is to recognize it as a skill set that ties together all of your natural strengths, all of the academic experiences you've had, maybe the technical certifications. An ounce of time spent on leadership development brings together the pounds and pounds of other natural abilities and talents you've worked to develop. So I think just thinking about, hey, have I thought of myself as a leader? Have I actually ever spent time studying leadership? And what can I do to consistently think about and learn about what it takes to be a better leader? And so that, and then some of the principles and practices in the book are things that I would recommend. And I bet we'll dig into some of those principles and practices.
That we will. Before we do, I just want to, I want to make it clear to listeners, if you're a parent, you got to lead your kids. So even if you're not in a leader position per se at work, these types of lessons apply to every part of life. One of the things you talked about was service-based leadership. Can you explain what that is?
Absolutely, right. And I think that's borrowing heavily from the ethos of our military experience. All of us who authored the book are veterans. And service-based leadership is about, one, our instincts are very powerful towards self, right? The instinct to self-preserve, the instinct to, let's even say it, be selfish is pretty strong. It's hardwired into us. And so a service-based orientation to the world is a learned leadership response. It's pushing yourself to look outward and to ask the question, how can I be of value to others? And to take action towards the answers that come to you when you ask that question. And again, not all the time. Nothing about leadership is about perfection. Yet, what can I do once or twice a day to proactively be of value to others? When I'm in a conflict situation, how can I sincerely try to understand the other person's viewpoint? Those are all examples of service-based leadership, putting the needs of others before our own.
Won't we get left behind?
Think about parent-child, right? Like I love the example you just brought up, right? We spend many years with our children putting their needs ahead of ours.
But I think people fear that they're going to get left behind or they won't get respect in that case. But that's not the truth, is it?
No. And again, I think so much about leadership is counterintuitive. I love that you brought up respect, right? I think as humans, we have two really strong fundamental needs. One, we want to be liked. And two, we want to be respected. Humans are social creatures. That's why the desire to be liked is very deep within us. Yet if you go about having those needs met in that order, trying to be liked first, you will find yourself adjusting to whatever is the flavor of the hour or the opinion of the person you're with or the go along to get along mindset will step in. Instead, if you flip the order and you focus first on earning respect and how you earn respect, through an ability to be of service to others, through an ability to demonstrate strong performance, to understand what expectations are for people that are filling your role, whether that's a role as a parent or the role you fill as a professional. We earn respect by being accountable. When we make a mistake, we own it. We don't place blame. We own it so we can get to the solution, right? All of these respect-earning behaviors combined with the courage to actually be yourself and to be authentic. Once you can do that, the like part literally just takes care of itself. Yet, again, we can see how maybe at seasons of our life, or we can observe it in others, where they do what they feel will make them acceptable or accepted in the moment. And it can be less than best leadership behavior in the long run.
Very true. So we've kind of talked about it. There are certain principles for great leadership. Let's dig into that. What are some of the most important principles that are part of this?
I think some of the ones I've talked about, right? Credibility, a sense of service, that sense of accountability. Those are ones that we certainly write about in Spark and that we find very important to your ability to influence outcomes and inspire others. Yeah, I think there's a couple others we haven't really touched on, right? One is confidence. Where does confidence come from, and how does confidence impact our ability to influence and inspire? It's interesting. Confidence is very internal. It has a lot to do with what we think and believe about ourselves. Now, certainly it's outwardly inspirational when someone can demonstrate confidence, especially in that VUCA environment we were talking about, volatile, uncertain, complex, or conflict-filled and ambiguous. That's when they can certainly build trust and credibility. So I think trying to be confident during times of challenge and change is where leaders can really, truly earn that opportunity and trust to influence and inspire. But confidence comes, again, internally. We can't fake it till we make it. I know that's a popular thing to say, yet it means we are experiencing our success. Even if we have just survived a difficult Tuesday, we're acknowledging how we had a part of that, again, internally in getting through that tough day. We're giving ourselves those positive self-appraisals. We're building ourselves up, not our own worst enemy with that internal voice. We're surrounding ourselves with folks that are positive role models. And when I say positive role models, I'm not talking about people that will just tell us what we want to hear. Some of the best role models I've had are the ones that have told me things about my blind spots or things that I didn't really want to hear, but they had my best interest in heart and they had the courage to share that insight with me. So we're doing that. And then we're also looking at other emotions that are so common. And you've talked about some of them already. Fear, worry, anxiety. These are really common human emotions. They do kill our confidence, though. And so we're recognizing when our fears are misplaced, exaggerated, not helpful to us, and we're working through that. Worry, insecurity. Sometimes with worry, we just have to stop and be in the moment. With insecurity, when we're comparing ourselves to all of those around us, but we're stacking the deck in their favor and diminishing our own contribution, we have to go right back to the start, right? We have to start to experience our success and value ourselves with positive self-appraisals. So simple things, all well-researched, all evidence-backed, but simple things we can do to start to build confidence. I think one of the key principles of leading well.
And I know you talk a lot about managing self-talk and our emotions in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not generally a conversation that happens in the workplace, is it?
Oh, my gosh. I spent my whole day talking about that. So I think it is. It definitely is, I think. And maybe not as overt, like a manager telling an employee to manage their emotions. But I think people bring so much emotion to the workplace. And there are really productive ways to work through that when you have high trust relationships.
And so that begs the question, how do you create high trust?
By demonstrating the behaviors that earn you trust.
And when you say by leading, it doesn't mean you need to have the title.
Not at all. Not at all. Some of the most influential leaders I've met were not people with those fancy job titles or senior positions on an organizational chart.
And that's what I think people need to realize is that you lead from wherever you are. And you can lead above and below on the corporate chain as well. You just have to... Or
outside of work altogether, right? Like parenting roles or someone who's taking care of an elderly family member. That caregiver role, taking care of their parents or their grandparents, right? I mean, there's so many opportunities to lead or being part of a church or a community organization.
That is so true. Across a variety of different areas. And they all meld together over time. I think my biggest lessons came from coaching kids. That really helped me to become a better adult and to better
what
understand.
What was it about that experience that made that? Because I see it too. I see coaches as leaders, and I think most of us listening can remember the name of a coach or remember a coach that made a difference.
When you've got 6-year-olds, you can't scream at them, right? You can't.
It's not going to work, right?
Not going to work. You don't expect perfection, right? You spend your time motivating them. And the question I have is, how often do people spend time at work motivating the people around them, telling them, good job, even for the simplest of things? You know, you swing the bat. Good job for swinging the bat. I don't care that you didn't hit the ball. I think it's just a lot of that positivity that comes out of it, and changing your expectations and being more patient, and then celebrating the wins.
I love it, right? Like, I think it's great. Like, how cool is that? The constraint of coaching a 6-year-old, right, means that some of these tools that probably aren't even acceptable in the workplace, you don't even have, right? Because we know in theory, yelling at our colleagues or belittling them or being passive aggressive or whatever negative behavior we wouldn't do to a 6-year-old, we can sometimes allow at work, right? So yeah, I love it. And then the positive side of that, like you just shared, is affirming someone or encouraging them or getting them to literally step up to the plate, whether that's at work or in a game. I think goes a long way, right? So think about it. It's all service. That's all service-based leadership. Coaching a 6-year-old is probably a laboratory on how do I use service to motivate and inspire. Clear explanations, clear standards, clear affirmation, a quick talk when something needs to get better, right? Think of how much constructive criticism we exchange with service by helping to make someone better at sport.
The other thing that comes up is fear, because those kids are scared, and it's helping them through their fears to be able to do things.
Creating a safe environment, right?
Yes. Yeah. It was a lot of fun doing all of that. And it helped me considerably. And for me, it was fear for me. You know why? I never played any of these sports. So here I am coaching these kids on how to do this stuff, and I've never played these sports. I just had to stay one step ahead of them, and all was well. And because I didn't have preconceived notions of how things were supposed to happen. I said, how do I get this kid from where he's at today to where he needs to be tomorrow? How do we take those simple steps? And it was enlightening in that way too. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform.
No, yeah, definitely. And that's what I think sometimes our out of work experiences are the best laboratories for our growth as a leader, right? Just like, I get it. The Marine Corps was my job, yet it really was a huge leadership laboratory. And sometimes when something isn't working well for me at work, I'm trying something different and bringing something in where I've been successful in my life at home as a mom or as a spouse.
And I think I hear this more in the Air Force, where they're taking these young kids and they're teaching them how to fly a fighter jet inside of a year. And it's about many of these same principles. It's people can learn when they're taught properly, and you can achieve great things in a short period of time if you're focused and you have the systems and processes and principles in place to make that happen. I think there was a story even in the book about...
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you're spot on, because our co-author, Sean, was an Air Force fighter pilot, and he talked about just the openness to talking about mistakes. And he had a pretty catastrophic in-flight incident where he had not fully plugged in and pressurized his G suit. So he subsequently blacked out when he started pulling Gs in the air. And he had to recover from that, save his own life and save the lives of all those folks on the ground that would have impacted if he had truly blacked out. And then once he landed, he had to get in a room with people who had more rank than him and more experience than him and share his failures and learn from them. And then what was he met with? Not reprimand or harshness, but absolute gratitude for his integrity. And you know what? His unit didn't have another G suit incident when they could have if he had tried to hide that or just move beyond it without sharing it as a lesson learned.
And so I know the aviation industry is phenomenal about this. Like, they've got checklists, and when things go wrong, they spend months trying to figure out why a plane crashed and how do we change this going forward. And that is one of the reasons flying is so safe, is because they take that process and they go to extreme levels of doing it. And, you know, the industry,
I would say it's extreme levels of accountability, right? And rigor with process, right? Yeah, no, that's great.
Which is not, so it's kind of, I was in the medical industry for years. The medical is 100% opposite. Nobody looks at that type of thing. And that's why medical errors are one of the leading causes of death in the United States, because we don't have that same level of accountability and systems and processes in there. And I know you talk about that because even in the workplace, you say that accountability is rare. Why is that?
I think it comes down to instincts, right? Instincts are about placing blame. And then we've almost institutionalized those instincts, right? If like our instinct is to self-preserve, I made a mistake. I don't want to look bad. I'm going to cover it up. And then we make it kind of okay for folks to get together and jump on a blame bandwagon and talk about all the external factors of what's causing a problem. People can have numerous meetings on why something isn't working without much individual ownership. And so in our book, we talk about start with the individual ownership, right? Like Sean with the G suit failure. He landed, he went to the ready room, he went to we call it a hot wash in the military, and he talked about where he personally was wrong. And that wasn't a whole discussion. Then there were many, many chapters of that discussion that were about lots of different things beyond his own personal accountability. Yet that's powerful. It doesn't work in reverse, where you spend a lot of time talking about why everybody else is wrong. You never get back to that individual ownership, and you don't get to a solutions phase. So it's interesting. I think it's fear, right? Fear has been a theme of our conversation, Rocky, and I think that's what it is. Like, it's almost like an insecurity. If I show that I'm not perfect, I'm going to be judged accordingly, and I'm going to limit my opportunities. Whereas the opposite is true, and that's why so much of leadership is counterintuitive. If we share our mistakes and we bring that vulnerability, not only do we learn, we also, in many ways, move beyond our mistakes and get to better levels of performance where we make new mistakes, but they're different. We grow and we expand, and we have that growth orientation. But it's really hard to do. I mean, it takes a lot for teams to be able to sit around and talk about individual mistakes in a very constructive way that's not about ridicule or politics or a power struggle.
And that's usually what it comes down to. It's learning to let go of that and to have that. And again, back in sports, that's the way we used to do things. People would blame the goalie. And I mean, like, you can't blame the goalie. The 10 of you in front of him failed. So if you want to blame the goalie, you better start blaming the other 10 people for letting the ball get to him.
You are speaking my language. My son is a keeper. He's a goalie, and he's young. He's 12 years old. And I always joke with his defensive members, his fullbacks. I always say, come on, guys, clean sheet today. And I'm talking to the three of them, not my son, right? Because it's really about all of them. Certainly my son plays a role. But yeah, it's great. It's a great lesson around accountability and everyone stepping up.
Well, I tell them, I said, you know, I want the goalkeeper to be bored out of his mind and asleep in goal, because that means you've all done your job. If he is working hard, you are not. And so you need to get back to it.
That is 100%. And we just had a tournament this past weekend, and we had 2 games where he was just sleeping. His only touches came when he begged his teammates to play back, right? And I said, hey, those are great games. You cannot be upset by that. Your team was rocking.
And that's what it comes down to. And we would also, we would tell the kids to try and fail. Like, go out there and try something and fail at it so that you learn the edges and you learn how to do things a little bit better. And we don't care if you fail at it. I would rather you try and fail than not try at all. And I think that creating that safe space is a big part of it too.
Yeah, I think 100%, right? And it's, as you're saying that too, it's like, why is that so hard for adults to plan to fail, to try to fail, right? And it's interesting. I mean, this has captivated us so much at my company, LeapStar, that our next book coming out next year is about that very topic, right? Betting on you and getting comfortable with failure and how you win with risk. Because I think that you're on to a whole lot of, where does next level leadership come from? And it's that courage to embrace risk and push yourself to a failure point. One of my daughters is a competitive swimmer, and boy, I've learned so much about how amazing that sport is. And she needs to fail in practice so that she can succeed against the clock when it's really important. And that means pushing herself to limits. And it's so interesting. We don't do that at work. We'll do that in sport.
And that's true, because I guess it's acceptable to fail in sports. And we would do that with skiing as well. Like, if you're not falling, you're not skiing because you haven't put yourself to the limit. So one of the things you talk about is the importance of consistency. And I know this comes up a lot. I see this as a major issue with people. It seems, and I don't know why, but it's hard for people to be consistent. What have you found?
I think people chase perfectionism, and I'd like to say readjust your sights onto consistency, because being perfect's not possible. And I think it produces that quest for it, the highs and the lows that aren't consistent with consistency. Yet, if we work to be consistent, that's going to get us much further than trying to swing for the fences, so to speak, since we've been talking a lot about sport and leadership. And I really believe sport is such a great laboratory for human leadership, because it's a false reality, right? There are clear rules. There are clear winners and losers. There's clear ways to resolve a conflict if there's a different situation that happens that seems out of the norm for the sport. And life isn't like that, right? We don't have all those all that clarity. Yet I feel like leadership is kind of the toolkit, right? And I think consistency brings progress more than a false quest for perfectionism.
And nothing can be perfect. I mean, there's always going to be problems, but just showing up and doing the work. I know. So I work out 3 days a week hard. But one of the things I've always said is I'm going to show up even if I'm not perfect. So there are times where I've been injured and I'll walk into the gym like, okay, we're going to work out at half weight today, because I'm not going to give up my habit just because something has come up, and I'll just adapt and continue to do it. And that's a big part. There's a lot of power in just showing up and being consistent. And the people who do, it goes back to what you talked about at the beginning with money. You consistently put $125 away every month, and over time it will compound and you will build wealth. You just got to show up and do that little bit every month.
Yeah, 100%, right? And I think as leaders, we have to determine, are we a sometimes person or an always person, right? And sometimes people, we can't really anticipate their behavior. Will they show up? Will they deliver the report by Thursday? Will they participate in the meeting, right? I don't want to be the sometimes person in the office, right? I want to be the one where they know that I'll meet the deadline, or they have no doubt that I'll put my thoughts in, even if I don't agree during that meeting, right? I want to consistently show up in a way that adds value and demonstrates my credibility.
So one of the things that you talked about in the book is somewhat counterintuitive, and I'm not sure if it was your story or your partner's, but it's slowing down to do more. And I think that's a struggle people face. I'd love to hear your insights.
Absolutely. Well, first, I will go ahead and put it out there that I am a huge fan of Greg McKeown's work. Greg McKeown is the author of a book called Essentialism, and I think I personally contribute to his New York Times bestseller status because I refer my clients and folks to that book all the time. But it really is about the theory of less better. And I see that so much of my work, right? And I'm very fortunate. I get to work with pretty amazing leaders. And then I get to work with people that are on their way to becoming amazing leaders, but they're wrestling, right? And oftentimes the wrestle is they have not yet figured out that it's not what you say yes to that allows you to be successful. It's what you say no to, and how you have white space and how you have time to rest, rejuvenate, relax, and refuel. And those things can sound frivolous, but they're actually essential to being successful and being actually in a place, whether that's mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, to be able to have the space to mindfully influence outcomes and inspire others. And so I am a significant believer in less better. And it's far easier to say yes to everything. It is more difficult to have that consistent discipline of really, truly living your values and doing and of committing to the things that you can be excellent at, and only those things.
And I try to do my best to slow down as much as I can. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, we're in the business built up a little too fast.
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right?
Yeah, now we're in the process of going, no more. It's time to back the handles down and relax, and this isn't going to work. And I'm okay with that. You mentioned spirituality. How does that fit in with leadership?
I think it's part of rejuvenating, refocusing, recognizing what we value. I think anytime we're exploring our faith or exploring issues of spirituality that matter to us, we're getting more and more insight into what we truly value and where we can best contribute.
So very true. Is there anything else that we should have talked about with regards to leadership that we have not covered today?
Wow. Well, it's interesting on the topic of consistency. What readers will find in Spark is a fair bit of guidance and proven in the field research guidance on time management. So time is the only level playing field that we have. You take 24 hours, 60 minutes. I'm doing the quick math, right? That's 1,440 minutes in a day. That is ours to allocate, and nobody has more, nobody has less. And so I think how leaders leverage time can be a really powerful accelerant for them. So I just wanted to bring time management up as a leadership topic, even though it can seem very simple and it has the word management in what it is. But how we allocate that non-renewable resource says a lot about us as leaders.
And so that reminds me of Parkinson's law, which most people aren't familiar with Parkinson's law, but it basically says time and resources expand to whatever is allotted to finish a job. So since we're talking about kids, right? Your kid gets a report. He's got 3 weeks to do it. It takes him 3 weeks to do it, which is a total lie because he blew off the first 17, 18 days. And, in the last 24 hours, they crunch down and they get the work done. And that is true with money. It's true with time. If you have too much time allocated to things, you will use up more time. But if you come to deadlines and you got to crank stuff out, you will get it done first and you'll get it done fast. And there are tons of time management books out there. But if you get your first 2 or 3 rocks of the day done first, especially your hardest one.
Yep. Or the one you want to do least, right? The one that seems undesirable, yes. For sure.
And that's what I should have said. Not the hardest one, but the most undesirable one. The hardest one it is for you to start. Because otherwise you spend half your day dreading it and getting nothing done. Yes.
And if you do it, you get so much momentum off of that, right? It's just a really interesting human factor. And we talk about that very thing in our book. So I agree 100%.
So we always like to get people to take action. Is there something you can suggest for people, an action step they could take this week to just take a little step forward?
Absolutely. I would encourage them to visit the Spark site. They can just go to sparkslead.us. So sparkslead.us, Sparks Lead Us. And there's tons of free resources there. Everything there is free. Handouts, videos, slide decks, watch a video, complete a handout. read an excerpt of the book. Just one little thing, one step to get formalized leadership learning into your world. So that's what I would say. And if that step sounds complicated, going to sparkslead.us, just Google, how can I grow as a leader? And click away and just spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes thinking about leadership like a student, thinking about leadership as if it's brand new to you. And I think that can put a lot of velocity into your trajectory.
And we are all leaders, so that shouldn't be an excuse. I'm not a leader. Somewhere in your life, you're leading.
Exactly. You might not be a boss or have an official title, but you are definitely leading. If you are an adult or an aspiring adult moving towards adulthood, you are leading. You are in the world of responsibility.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Sharing generously with others and focusing on what I'm grateful for.
People don't realize, giving brings a lot more happiness than receiving. And there's science behind that. So that makes a lot of sense. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
That striving isn't as joyful as expressing, right? It feels more organized and you're focused on achieving. Yet when we get to that position where we're no longer proving ourselves and we're just expressing ourselves, that's the sweet spot.
So let's dig into that. For when you say expressing yourself, what exactly do you mean?
I think we spend a certain season of our life proving ourselves, right? We want to show everybody how great we are. We want to show people we can do it. Yet I think now, I think of even how I work with my clients. I certainly want to add value to my clients. I want to help them come up with solutions and resolve people challenges and work on strategic matters. Yet I gain a lot of, I think, credibility, and I hope I add a lot of value to my clients when I can express very freely how they're doing well and where they can be better. And when I can share what I don't know and I'm concerned about, and I can be vulnerable in that way, and we can work through that together. So I think that expressing ourselves is bringing what we have. We might express through our talents. We might express through our opinions. Proving ourselves is still a little bit about ego and about, let me show someone how great I am versus how can I show up and be valuable right now.
And that makes a lot of sense. I classify that as the stage of life where it's contribution, where you're giving back, so to speak. And it's essentially what you're talking about.
And I think we can get there sooner rather than later, right? In the sense of I got to serve as a young Marine in my early 20s, contributing to my country and trying to be a part of something bigger than myself. And then I think I got a little away from it, right? And I was less about contribution and maybe more about gain or achievement. And then hopefully I think I found my way back to contribution.
It's a journey.
It is. Sometimes not a straight one of upward progression, right? It's a little back and forth.
It's always a roller coaster.
For sure.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Bet on you. Bet on yourself. And that means you have the responsibility of developing yourself. You have the responsibility of being self-aware to your blind spots. And you have this the responsibility of building the confidence to continue to embrace risk.
None of that's taught in school, unfortunately.
It's not, right? And honestly, it's taught more through challenge, right? We learn more through the valleys than we do for those fleeting moments on mountaintops, right? And so I would say, like we were talking about failure earlier, put yourself in the arena where you're not going to win. And that's going to actually be an accelerant for your greater success overall.
That it will. If people would like to learn more about the book and your organization, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way is to learn about the book is at the website I mentioned, sparkslead.us. Every resource there is free. We designed the book to be read in community with a small team, a partner, a big group, and all the resources to do that are there at the site. And if they just want to learn about our company, LeadStar, they can learn more at leadstar.us. We have a lot of those .us websites. It's our little hats off to U.S. Marines.
Pretty cool. And we'll put those in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Rocky. I really appreciate your time today and your interest in leadership and the work you do makes such an impact. So I'm glad I could be a part of it.
Are you the spark that brings about change? Are you willing to step up and make change? How do you deal with VUCA in your life? I got to tell you, I really struggle with this over time. It's not something I like, but I continue to work with it. And I continue to learn and take that next step forward. Speaking of action steps, this week's action step was to check out sparkslead.us to learn something about leadership. They've got plenty of free resources for you to improve yourself. As for me, I love systems, processes, and checklists. As often as possible in life, I create processes to make my life easier. Everything from producing this podcast production to our finances to just things as simple as the grocery list. I want to leave you with a few questions. Are you willing to share your screw-ups, address them, and then improve? Where are you trying to fail? If you're not, you're really not living, and that's failure. Next week, we've got on Andrew Caldera to talk about The Way, 7 revolutionary steps to living a meaningful life and making a real difference in the world. Your ultimate guide to positive relationships, optimal health, true success, and lasting happiness. And who doesn't want that? By the way, if you enjoyed today's episode and think it can help someone, would you please share it? I'd appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.